Okay, good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to this year's Mlk Vigil. My name is Jalil Spearman, and I am the president of the Black Male Leadership Initiative, which is an organization on campus that was founded to foster a sense of brotherhood within the Black male population at Rice through our three pillars of leadership, mentorship, and service. And I will now be passing over to Mlk.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mlk Vigil. I'm a senior from Blaine, Minnesota, studying sociology and minoring in African and African American studies, and I'm the vice president of BMLI. We have a variety of performances tonight and a keynote speech by Dr. Alexander Byrd. With that being said, I'd like to introduce our first performer of the night, Charlene Sadberry Tombar, who will be performing the Black National Anthem. Charlene Sadberry Tombar is an alumna of Rice University, class of 2005, where she earned a degree in music from the Shepherd School. She is professionally known as Charlie Berry. In addition to her classical training, she explores R&B, gospel, and jazz. She is a singer-songwriter and a recording artist, aspiring to be a part of the soundtrack that heals and encourages people in their lives. She is the devoted wife of Tim Tombar and the mother of three little girls, Madeline, Vivian, and Isabel.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty.
Thank you, Charlene, for that wonderful performance. Now we'll be moving on to Monique Schenkel, who will give us an overview of the history of the MLK Vigil. Monique Schenkel currently serves as president of the Association of Rice Alumni and is a consultant in the energy industry. She is a 1986 graduate of Rice University. She also earned a master's degree from Texas Southern University and a doctor of jurisprudence from the University of Houston. Since graduating from Rice, Monique has dedicated her time to Rice and many other local organizations in various capacities.
Good evening, everyone. When I was asked to share the history of one of the oldest traditions of Black students at Rice, that being a vigil and program celebrating the life of Dr. Martin Luther King, I readily agreed. This would be a simple task, I thought. Someone will give me a copy of the history and I will share it with everyone. Well, as it turns out, it's not that easy. There's no written history located in one document. What ensued was a search of multiple documents that offered the information that I will now share. While I am excited to do this, I want to remind you of lessons I learned from this endeavor. Number one, history reflects the memory of those who report it. And number two, while oral history has been a significant part of the Black culture, it really helps future generations when we write it down. So here's what I discovered. When did the celebration begin? As you may know, the National MLK Holiday debuted on January the 20th, 1986. Yet, I found the following stated in the fall 2016 issue of our alumni magazine. It says, since 1974, Rice has celebrated Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Day with an annual vigil and program. I checked with Black alumni from that era to confirm their experiences, and they did not remember that. They indicated that since most of them are approaching, reached, or are over 70 years of age, they may have forgotten, or more than likely, it was the April commemoration of the anniversary of his death that may have been celebrated and mistakenly identified as a birthday celebration. An article in Rice News reporting on the January 2001 celebration of the MLK Vigil and program stated that it was the 6th annual celebration of this event. It appears, therefore, that the first celebration began in 1995. Who? Since the Rice Black Student Union, or BSU, began in 1974 and only transitioned into being the Black Student Association, or BSA, in 1994, it appears that the organization to host the celebration was the BSA. In 2019, the Black Male Leadership Initiative took on the responsibility and privilege of hosting the event. One special note, a staff member from the Rice Fundler Library for years provided candles for the vigil. If anyone has the name of this wonderful individual, please share it for our records. Over time, the Rice community has chosen to celebrate in different places and in different ways. Several Rice News articles indicated that participants assembled at Willie Statue for the vigil and proceeded over to the Rice Chapel. Participants have also assembled in the Ray courtyard in front of the chapel for the vigil and then proceeded inside. One year, because of severe cold, the vigil also occurred inside the chapel and participants used battery-operated candles. In a complete departure from either of those locations, in one of the 2000 ceremonies, the group assembled on the steps of Sewell Hall for the vigil and then proceeded to Sewell Hall 100. And last year, the celebration was commemorated through a specially prepared video. Finally, this year, we have returned to a similar but virtual gathering. Program components have traditionally included a theme. Some of the themes have been achieving success by working together, dreamers and doers, and this year's keeping the dream alive. Tonight's theme was so impacting in 2020 that we brought it to the table again, most likely as a statement that in this COVID season, keeping anything going is a necessity upon which we must focus. Programs began with a song, a rendering of the Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing, and usually ended with the movement song, We Shall Overcome, which was sung as we walked over to the reception that often followed. So pretend that you're having a virtual reception tonight. In between, there were often other songs sung by groups such as the Melodious Voices of Praise, a Rice Black gospel group, or by alum Philip Hall and the Philip Hall Singers, or individuals performed, such as Chelsea Sharp, a Black music student at Rice who performed Deep River on her violin, and Gabe Baker, a Black engineering student and football player who performed on his cello. Presentations have included keynote speakers or a panel of speakers from both the Rice and Greater Houston communities, and dramatic readings from Houston area elementary school students. Both of Houston's Black mayors, prominent Black attorney Gene Bach, Otis King, the former dean of the Texas Southern University Law School, councilperson Amanda Edwards, President David Lee Braun, Dr. Ruth Lopez Turley, Reverend William A. Lawson, Pastor Emeritus of Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church in 3rd Ward, and former Provost Marie Lynn Miranda are just some of the previous speakers. Some participants have presented more than once. In 2001, a current student, Charlene Sadberry, Tumbar now, performed the Black National Anthem. Tonight, she joined us again as an alumnus. In 2020, the Dean of Rice's School of Engineering and soon to become Provost spoke. Tonight, Reginald DeRoche speaks as Provost, soon to become President of Rice University, the first Black person to hold this position. As I close, I encourage those of you with additional information about this celebration and other important moments in the lives of the Rice Black student community to share it with one of the 7 Black students groups that now exist, or with members of the Rice Task Force on Slavery, Segregation, and Racial Injustice, or with the Woodson Research Center in Rice's Fondren Library. Finally, why have we consistently done this in whatever way it has been done? Over the years, we have celebrated. Why do we face whatever challenges we may be facing and persist in making a celebration happen? Simply, we find value in the life and work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and we pick up the legacy of his work as we endeavor to be a part of keeping the dream alive. Thank you.
Thank you, Monique, for sharing the history of the Mlk Vigil at Rice. Now we will have a recorded performance by the Philip Hall Singers. Rice alumnus Philip Hall from the class of 1988 is the creator and director of the Philip Hall Singers. The Philip Hall Singers is a nonprofit organization dedicated to the musical and social enrichment of the greater Houston area. With dynamic young conductor Charles Harrison and talented singers, Mr. Hall looks to introduce repertoire from various traditions, eras, and cultures. The group's major goal is to become a cultural ambassadors for the city of Houston by presenting quality performances of anthems, spirituals, hymns, pop, Broadway, and gospel music. Since its inception in 2015, the Philip Hall Singers have garnered rave reviews from performing for former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, Interfaith Ministries Tapestry Gala, Music for Autism, Purple Songs Can Fly, Texas Children's Hospital, Gospel Music Workshop of America, Houston chapter, and for church events, wedding ceremonies, and other civic functions. I would also like to add that our first performer, Charlene, was accompanied by Philip Hall on the piano during her performance.
Hey. up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hey, I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
I shall not be moved. Oh, I shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water. Hey, I shall not be moved. Hey, I shall not be moved. I shall not be moved. Oh, I shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water. I shall not be moved. If you miss me from the back of the bus, you can't find me nowhere. Just come on up to the front of the bus. I'll be riding up there. Oh, I'll be riding up there. I'll be riding up there somewhere. Just come on up to the front of the bus. I'll be riding up there. Oh, you know that I'll be riding up there. I'll be riding up there somewhere. Just come on up to the front of the bus. I'll be riding up there.
I woke up this morning with my mind
Stayed on freedom.
I
Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah,
That was an amazing performance. Thank you, Philip Hall Singers. I will now give the floor to President Lebron.
Thank you very much, Mlk. I want to begin by thanking Jaleel Spearman, all those in the Black Male Leadership Initiative who have organized this event and really made it happen. I'm so sorry that we can't be together in person again this year, as one of the things I have most appreciated about the past vigils has been the spirit in the room, which is a bit harder to feel on Zoom. Before getting to the principal speaker, I want to make just a few observations. I remember quite vividly the night of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. on April 4th, 1968, my sense of immense loss and sadness, even at a very young age. 15 years later, in 1983, the national holiday was finally approved, and the first nationwide observance was held 3 years later. It was only in 2000 that finally all 50 states recognized it as a state holiday as well. It's a day on which we recognize the distinct contributions and legacy of the Reverend Martin Luther King. It's a day on which we acknowledge the discriminatory aspects of our past. But for me, much more in the spirit of Martin Luther King, it is a day in which we think about what justice requires and think about the possibilities to realize more fully the aspirations of our nation. We will undoubtedly often disagree among ourselves about what remains to be done and how to do it, but I do not think we can disagree that much progress still needs to be made. Each MLK weekend, I spend some time learning about Martin Luther King Jr. or rereading some of his speeches or writings. Among the most important, of course, is his April 1963 letter from Birmingham jail, a remarkable letter that runs about 7,000 words. And perhaps the most famous line in King's letter is, quote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." It is immediately followed by one less quoted and taken from King's 1965 commencement speech at Oberlin that struck me this year. I quote again, "We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny." For me, that is a key part of the importance of having the celebration of Martin Luther King Day as a national holiday, a recognition that our destiny as a nation, that our success in living up to our ideals and aspirations, that our ability to assure a good and just future for all are all deeply dependent on our ability to recognize our common aspirations and obligations. That line resounds also with one in a speech King had given at Vanderbilt just a few months earlier, in which he said, quote, "At the heart of all that civilization has meant and developed is community, the mutual cooperative and voluntary venture of man to assume a semblance of responsibility for his brother," unquote. That is why I think we so needed a national holiday to celebrate the spirit of Martin Luther King, and why it remains so important each year to remind ourselves of the single fabric that ties us together and the centrality of responsibility in constituting community, whether here at Rice or more broadly in our city, in our country, and indeed across our world. And I cannot think of anyone better to speak to and on behalf of our Rice community than Alex Byrd. I have been at Rice for now almost 18 years, but that's nothing compared to Alex, who nonetheless, I want to say, is much younger than I am. Alex entered Rice in 1986 as a freshman after graduating from the Jack Yates High School in Houston's historic Third Ward. He graduated from Rice in 1990 with majors in history and English. He received his doctorate degree from Duke in 2001 and joined the faculty that year as an assistant professor. Professor Byrd has spent 25 of the last 36 years at Rice, dedicated to bringing enlightenment to his students, knowledge to the world, and improvement to his university. He and his wife served as magisters of Rice College, and Alex subsequently moved into administration as Associate Dean of Humanities. And in 2020, Alex was named to the new and vitally important position of Vice Provost for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Alex's scholarship focuses on Black life in the Atlantic world during slavery and in the Jim Crow South. His book, Captives and Voyagers, was awarded the 2009 Wesley Logan Prize in African Diaspora History. He is a four-time recipient of the George R. Brown Award for Superior Teaching, and in 2010, the recipient of the Presidential Mentoring Award. In 2020, he was effectively recognized as one of the top 10 teachers in Texas in receiving or being awarded a Piper Professorship by the Minnie Stevens Piper Foundation. When the history of this time is written, I have no doubt that Alex Byrd will be recognized as one of the key people in making our university better, in enabling us to rise to the challenges of our history and to the difficult opportunities of our time. We could not be more grateful to Alex Byrd. Please join me in welcoming him for the keynote speech of this evening.
It is a real pleasure to be with all of you this evening in this way. I hope that if you can't hear me, someone will pop on to say, we can't hear you. Many thanks to President Lebron for his generous welcome and introduction, to the BLMI for taking on the task of organizing this evening's affair, to the Office of Multicultural Affairs and to the Office of Multicultural Community Relations for their long-standing support for tonight's event. I'm happy to be here to share some remarks on the theme, Keeping the Dream Alive. I'm happy to be here. I'm also honored and grateful to be here. And one of the ways that I'm determined to show my appreciation is by talking at a fast enough clip that I don't keep us too long in this part of the program. Keeping the dream alive. The theme is a familiar and worthwhile one. It is the charge, isn't it? It is the charge of all of those who were left behind, so to speak, who lived through and who have lived since in the wake of the murder of Dr. King, who was assassinated, as President Lebron pointed out, in April of 1968. He was assassinated in the land of his birth, in the American South, in the United States of America, in Memphis, Tennessee, because of his work, because of his commitments, because he believed and was committed to the possibility that a real democracy, a beloved community based in reconciliation and justice and dialogue and peace was possible here. He was assassinated because those beliefs and that work, though they inspired great hope and promise in some and indifference in others, also inspired and tapped into a hatred that had long existed in his homeland for those who believed what he believed, and for those who were committed to the kind of work to which he committed himself. This is a dark start. But among the many reasons we are here today, tragedy is certainly chief among them. And it makes sense, I think, to underline the fact. It is useful to linger over it and to examine some of the places that it points us to now. Dr. King's favorite opera, I never thought I would say those words. Dr. King's favorite opera was remarkably and astonishingly tragic. Lucia de Lammermoor. I have zero Italian, so I have no idea if I have said it properly. I've listened to it on the, I was about to say the radio, but on iTunes on occasion. I have read its tragic summaries. Lucia de Lammermoor was a mainstay of the Metropolitan Opera for many years during King's lifetime. Years did not pass that it was an annual show in his lifetime. And he listened to it on a drive from Atlanta to Montgomery in January 1954, on the way to discuss taking up the pulpit of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, the church from which he would be introduced to the world. Now, the only reason I know this about Lucia de Lammermoor is because I learned it in my very first African-American history class at Rice. I also promptly forgot it, that particular point. But then I relearned it again, teaching history at Rice myself and returning to where I had learned it in the first place, in King's autobiographical account of the Montgomery bus boycott, Stride Toward Freedom, a book that the late Julius S. Scott III, my very first Black history professor, had assigned to us in his remarkable course on the history of the US Civil Rights Movement. What a gift that was. What a gift Dr. Scott gave to me by putting Dr. King's own words in my hands with a spate of secondary and primary sources on the late 20th century iteration of the larger Black freedom struggle. Dr. Scott pointed out a useful path for understanding the country in which I was born and lived, which brings me to my first point of the evening, a question of the evening, more precisely, actually, two questions regarding the theme: which king? Which dream? Keeping the dream alive. Which king? Which dream? The king who fits neatly into the lines of the 1979 postage stamp, the Black Heritage stamp that was issued in commemoration of his life in the late 1970s. I love that stamp, by the way. My father collected stamps. And so the Black History series was an important part of my young life. The king who fit on that stamp, though, within the lines of that stamp, is that the king we are to remember? Is that the dream we are to keep alive? Is that the king, or is it the king who developed ideas on the necessity of restructuring, of fundamentally restructuring American society? The dream of the abbreviated March on Washington, the March on Washington, or the dream of the March on Washington for jobs and freedom, the dream of the March on Washington movement of the 1940s, of the era of World War II, on which the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom was a continuation. Is that the dream? And that dream's connections to the freedom dreams of American slaves who saw the Civil War as a beginning of a real chance for justice in America. The beloved king? Is that the king we are to remember? Or the king who in the last months of his life, whose views on American war making and on economic fairness had all but made him a pariah in American life? We have resuscitated him significantly since. The energized king, is that who we are to remember? Or the king whose body and whose mind and whose family paid a tremendous price while he was alive, and eventually the ultimate price for his work? The purpose and the point here, of course, is not to answer these questions now and here, but one of the points I want to make is to acknowledge that the university is a phenomenal place to ask and answer and to explore the relationship between King's work and the larger Black freedom struggle and the larger struggle for American democracy that is still ongoing. Professor Young, Professor Yarbrough, Professor Sidbury, Professor Ward, Professor Prendergast, Professor Washington, Professor McDaniel, Professor McIntosh, Professor Morgan, Professor Penn, Professor King, Professor Lassane Brown, Professor Massey, Professor Estrella, Professor Fleischer, Professor Hayes. I've named too many names and have probably missed some, but this is a phenomenal place. Professor Brown, Professor Bamba, Professor Boudreau, Professor Bratter, Professor Dominguez da Silva. This is and has become a phenomenal place for seeking answers to these questions. A better place than it has ever been. A remarkable place for asking and answering these questions. And so I am encouraged to continue here at Rice to examine the relationship between King and the larger Black freedom struggle of which it was a part, and its relationship to the struggles that are happening now outside our very doors, to grapple with the difficulties that arise, past and present, when examining King in context. As Monique pointed out, as Monique Schenkel pointed out, the roots of this event, the roots of this vigil, also speak to the importance of remembering the impetus of the holiday, the tragic impetus of the holiday, and what that impetus may mean for us now. That time was set off to go off in 12 minutes, so that means I have 3 more minutes. As Monique pointed out, some of the earliest commemorations of King's life and work at Rice were set in April, near the anniversary of his tragic death. And that setting speaks to the importance of what we came to call this moment and what we continue to call it today. It is a vigil. A vigil is to wait. But it is not to wait as one would wait on a bus, right? I rode the bus a lot as a kid getting around. You don't wait on it like you wait on a bus. A vigil is also, it is a waiting that is also a devotion, and a devotion that is also a work. If this, I think this is a terrible analogy, but I'm stuck with it right now. If you waited on a bus like the weight of a vigil was, it would be a weight that was not just waiting, right? It would be a weight that was also manufacturing the bus and fueling the bus and driving the bus. So this vigil, this word that is stuck for years and years with this commemoration, speaks to the tragedy of King's death, and a waiting on and a working toward what he waited on and working toward. And by saying what he waited on and worked toward, what the larger movement, the freedom struggle, the movement for real American democracy, that waiting and that working. Black students, and the BSU in particular, and undergraduates at this university and in many places have been committed to this work, this type of vigil, for a long time. In April of 1974, this may be the piece that the alumni magazine was speaking to. The BSU, in association with Black Community Radio in Houston, KYOK, and other community organizations, began a signature drive to collect signatures to encourage the creation of a King holiday, a local and state level and national holiday. They were waiting and working. In the 1960s at Rice, the Rice Thresher in 1963 and 1964 bemoaned the inability to follow through on an invitation that had been issued to Dr. King to speak at the university, but then had to be politely rescinded because of the work that the university was engaged in 1963 and 64. And the fears that inviting Dr. King to campus would complicate the suit that aimed to desegregate the university. The Thresher bemoaned the fact that King could not arrive and look forward to a day of vibrant debate and dialogue around issues related to desegregation in the same ways that I am encouraged, and I hope you continue to be encouraged about the debates and the dialogue that I hope this holiday re-energizes us all to be committed to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Byrd, for your speech. It's always a pleasure to hear you speak. Now I'll be introducing our final performer of the night. Tamara Seiler has been a member of the Office of Admission at Rice since 1992 and works as Deputy Director of Admission, Access, and Inclusion with a special focus on programming related to the recruitment and support of historically excluded student populations throughout the recruitment and admission process. Tamara graduated from Rice in 1987 with a BA in history. She is also an accomplished actor, having appeared in over 80 productions in and around Houston. Tamara will be sharing a dramatic reading of Langston Hughes' Let America Be America Again.
Thank you, Makasa. Let America be America again. Let it be the dream it used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the plain, seeking a home where he himself is free. America never was America to me. Let America be the dream the dreamers dreamed. Let it be that great, strong land of love where never kings connive nor tyrants scheme, that any man be crushed by one above. It never was America to me. Oh, let my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false pretense and no false patriotic wreath. But opportunity is real and life is free. Equality is in the air we breathe. There's never been equality for me, nor freedom in this homeland of the free. Say, who are you that mumbles in the dark? And who are you that draws your veil across the stars? I am the poor white, fooled and pushed apart. I am the Negro bearing slavery scars. I am the red man driven from the land. I am the immigrant clutching the hope I seek and finding only the same old stupid plan of dog eat dog, of mighty crush the weak. I am the young man full of strength and hope, tangled in that ancient, endless chain of profit, power, gain, of grab the land, grab the gold, of grab the ways of satisfying need, of work the men, of take the pay, of owning everything for one's own greed. I am the farmer, bondsman to the soil. I am the worker sold to the machine. I am the Negro, servant to you all. I am the people, humble, hungry, mean, hungry yet today despite the dream, beaten yet today. Oh, pioneers, I am the man who never got ahead, the poorest worker bartered through the years. Yet, I am still the one who dreamt our basic dream in the old world while still a serf of kings, who dreamt a dream so strong, so brave, so true, that even yet in its mighty daring sings in every brick and stone, in every furrow turned, that's made America the land it has become. Oh, I'm the man who sailed those early seas in search of what I meant to be my home. For I'm the one who left dark Ireland's shore and Poland's plain and England's grassy lea. And torn from Black Africa's strand, I came to build a homeland of the free. The free. Who said the free? Not me, surely not me. The millions on relief today, the millions shot down when we strike, the millions who have nothing for our pay, for all the dreams we've dreamed, and all the songs we've sung, and all the hopes we've held, and all the flags we've hung, the millions who have nothing for our pay except the dream that's almost dead today. Oh, let America be America again, the land that never has been yet, and yet must be, the land where every man is free. The land that's mine, the poor Negroes, the poor Indians, me, who made America, whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain must bring back our mighty dream again. Sure, call me any ugly name you choose. The steel of freedom does not stain. From those who live like leeches on the people's lives, we must take back our land again. America. Oh yes, I say it plain. America never was America to me, and yet I swear this oath, America will be. Out of the rack and ruin of our gangster death, the rape and rot of graft and stealth and lies, we, the people, must redeem the land, the mines, the plants, the rivers, the mountains, and the endless plain, all the stretch of those great green states, and make America again.
Thank you, Tamara, for that powerful, powerful performance. And thank you to all the performers we have had tonight. Provost DeRoche will now give the closing remarks. Dr. Reginald DeRoche is Rice University's provost and will become the 8th president of the university in July. He also serves as professor of civil and environmental engineering and mechanical engineering. As the university's chief academic officer, DeRoche works closely with Rice's president, David Lebron, to advance the university's teaching, research, and service mission. He leads the university's strategic efforts to ensure the Rice's academic and research programs are world-class and aligned with the university's commitment to diversity, inclusion, and equity. The provost is also responsible for the continued excellence of the university's research centers and institutes, and oversees the operations of the university's 7 schools and the Glasscock School of Continuing Studies.
Thanks, Mlk. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Well, thanks and good evening. It's an honor to be here with you today to celebrate the legacy of the great Martin Luther King. I want to also thank Jaleel Spearman and the Black Leadership Initiative, and thank Dr. Byrd for his insightful remarks. which as always are delivered so eloquently. I also want to thank and acknowledge President Lebron for his many years of dedication to Rice and unwavering commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Having lived in Atlanta, the birthplace of Dr. King, for nearly 20 years, I'm acutely aware of the incredible impact and legacy left by Dr. King. Indeed, it's hard to imagine where we would be without the many sacrifices that Dr. King and many like him made for us to be here. Some people see the holiday as a time to educate members of our community on how far we've come as a society and to educate people on the many changes that were driven by Dr. King and others. Some see it as a day to celebrate, of celebration for the progress we've made, great progress that has been made over the past few decades. Some people see the holiday as a time to reaffirm our demand for social justice and equity. Yet others use the holiday as a time to serve their community in meaningful ways, like Dr. King did for the vast majority of his life. Martin Luther King Day has a special significance for me this year. As incoming president of Rice, the first Black person to hold this position, I can't help but think of those that came before me at Rice that paved the way, that paved the path for me to be in this position. Over 50 years ago, Rice had his first Black student graduate, Raymond Johnson, who got a PhD in mathematics. He was followed by Ted Henderson and Linda Faye Williams, the first two Black undergraduates to earn degrees from Rice in 1970. I can't begin to imagine the struggles they went through and the pressure they faced every day, knowing that the future of other Blacks at Rice in many ways depended on how they did both inside and outside the classroom. Following the announcement of my presidency last year, I was often asked how I felt to be the first Black president at Rice. I would use the common terms of honored, humbled, excited. However, as I sit here today and reflect on Dr. King and his legacy, the word that comes to mind is indebted. Many people sacrificed, in some cases, their lives for me to be in this position and for many of you to be where you are. So indeed, I feel very indebted. In closing, I hope we will remember those that have sacrificed for us to be here today. That requires that we continue to work tirelessly every day, not just on MLK Day or Black History Month, to make sure that we have a just and equitable society, to ensure that all kids have the opportunity to achieve their goals and dreams, no matter what they look like or where they come from. Thanks again for allowing me to close this session this evening.
Thank you, Provost DeRoche. Although we are unable to meet in person this year, we do want to honor the life of MLK with a virtual vigil on Instagram. We invite you to participate by searching for BMLI on Instagram @RiceBMLI and share the MLK candle image that has been placed on our page, which is the image that you can see behind me. For those of you not on Instagram, Javier will place a link in the chat with the online website that you can use in downloading the image and share it on any other platform you would like. In sharing this image, we encourage you to include how you are or plan on keeping the dream alive. Use the hashtag 22RiceMLK so our team can share some of your responses. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We hope you will continue to actively keep the dream alive towards building a beloved community that truly supports one another. Have a good evening.